Demonstratives are words like this and that, used to indicate which entities are being referred to and to distinguish those entities from others. They are typically deictic, the meaning depending on a particular frame of its reference. Demonstratives are often used in spatial deixis, but also in intra-discourse reference, so-called discourse deixis, or anaphora, where the meaning is dependent on something other than the relative physical location of the speaker. For example, whether something is currently being said or was said earlier. Demonstrative words include demonstrative adjectives or demonstrative determiners, which qualify nouns, and demonstrative pronouns, which stand independently. The demonstratives in English are this, that, these, those, and the archaic yon and yonder, along with this one or that one as substitutes for the pronoun use of this or that. Distal and proximal demonstratives. Many languages, such as English and Chinese, make a two-way distinction between demonstratives. Typically, one set of demonstratives is proximal, indicating objects close to the speaker, and the other series is distal, indicating objects further removed from the speaker. Other languages, like Nandi, Spanish, Portuguese, Armenian, Serbo-Croatian, Macedonian, Georgian, Basque and Japanese make a three-way distinction. Typically there is a distinction between proximal a first person, medial a second person, and distal a third person. Italian also provided for remedial, but it fell out of use in the 19th century. So for example, in Portuguese, esta maca, this apple, essa maca, that apple, aquela maca, that apple, in Armenian, this apple, that apple, and, in Georgian, amisi mama, this one's father, imasi kolai, that one's wife, majisi sakslai, that one's house, and, in Ukrainian, this man, this woman, this apple, these apples, that man, that woman, that apple, those apples, that man, that woman, that apple, those apples, and, in Japanese, this apple, that apple, that apple, in Nandi, chegochu, 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 in this milk, and that milk. Ancient Greek has a three-way distinction between delta epsilon, omicron tau omicron sigma, and kappa epsilon nu omicron sigma. Spanish, Tamil and Seri also make this distinction. French has a two-way distinction with the use of postpositions ci and la, as in cet om ci and cet om la, as well as the pronouns ce and celo, California. English has an archaic but occasionally used three-way distinction of this, that, and yonder. Arabic has also a three-way distinction, very rich, with more than 70 variants. The demonstrative pronouns in Arabic principally change depending on the gender and the number. They mark a distinction in number for singular, dual, and plural. For example, this man, that man, that man. In modern German, the demonstrative is generally distance-neutral, and the deictic value may be defined more precisely by means of adverbs. Dieses Mädchen hier, dieses Mädchen dort, da. This girl, the girl. A distal demonstrative exists in German, cognate to the English yonder, but it is used only in formal registers. Jenes Mädchen, yonder girl. There are languages which make a four-way distinction, such as Northern Sami, dat baila, this car, dat baila, that car, duo baila, that car, dot baila, that car. These four-way distinctions are often termed proximal, massio-proximal, massio-distal, and distal. Many non-European languages make further distinctions, for example, whether the object referred to is uphill or downhill from the speaker, whether the object is visible or not, and whether the object can be pointed to as a whole or only in part. The Eskimo-Aleutian languages, and the Kiranti branch of the Sino-Tibetan language family are particularly well known for the many contrasts. The demonstratives in Seri are compound forms based on the definite articles and therefore incorporate the positional information of the articles, in addition to the three-way spatial distinction. This results in a quite elaborated set of demonstratives. Demonstrative series in other languages. Latin had several sets of demonstratives, including hic, haec, hoc, iste, ista, is stud, and illa, allude. Note that Latin has not only number, but also 3 grammatical genders. The third set of Latin demonstratives developed into the definite articles in most Romance languages, such as el, le, los, las in Spanish, and les in French, with the exception of Romanian, Asturian, and some varieties of Spanish and Portuguese. The neuter gender has been lost in the Romance languages. Spanish, Asturian, and Portuguese have kept neuter demonstratives. Some forms of Spanish and Portuguese also occasionally employ elo, which is an archaic survival of the neuter pronoun from Latin allude. Neuter demonstratives refer to ideas of indeterminate gender, such as abstractions and groups of heterogeneous objects, and has a limited agreement in Portuguese. For example, all of that can be translated as todo aquele, toda aquela, or tudo aquilo in Portuguese, although the neuter forms require a masculine adjective agreement. Tudo aquilo est equilibrado. Classical Chinese had 3 main demonstrative pronouns: proximal, distal, and distance neutral. The frequent use of as a resumptive demonstrative pronoun that reasserted the subject before a noun predicate caused it to develop into its colloquial use as a copula by the Han period, and subsequently its standard use as a copula in modern Standard Chinese. Modern Mandarin has 2 main demonstratives, proximal and distal. Its use of the 3 classical demonstratives has become mostly idiomatic, although continues to be used with some frequency in modern written Chinese. Cantonese uses proximal and distal instead of and, respectively. Hungarian has 2 spatial demonstratives, ez and Arizona. These inflect for number and case even in attributive position with possible orthographic changes, e.g. ezel, aben. A third degree of deixis is also possible in Hungarian, with the help of the prefix amaz. The use of this, however, is emphatic and not mandatory. A Cree language has a special demonstrative for things just gone out of sight, and Ilocano, a language of the Philippines, has 3 words for this, referring to a visible object, a fourth for things not in view, and a fifth for things that no longer exist. Demonstrative determiners and pronouns. It is relatively common for a language to distinguish between demonstrative determiners, demonstrative adjectives, and demonstrative pronouns. A demonstrative determiner modifies a noun. This apple is good. I like those houses. A demonstrative pronoun stands on its own, replacing rather than modifying a noun. This is good. I like those. There are 5 demonstrative pronouns in English: this, that, these, those, and the less common yonder, yonder. Author Bill Bryson laments the losses along the way of yon and yonder. Today we have 2 demonstrative pronouns, this and that, but in Shakespeare's day there was a third, yon, which suggested a further distance than that. You could talk about this hat, that hat, and yon hat. Today the word survives as a colloquial adjective, yonder, but our speech is fractionally impoverished for its loss. Demonstrative adverbs. Many languages have sets of demonstrative adverbs that are closely related to the demonstrative pronouns in a language. For example, corresponding to the demonstrative pronoun that are the adverbs such as then, there, thither, thence. Equivalent adverbs corresponding to the demonstrative pronoun this and now, here, hither, hence. A similar relationship exists between the interrogative pronoun what and the interrogative adverbs when, where, whither, whence. See proform for a full table. Discourse deixis is mentioned above. While the primary function of demonstratives is to provide spatial references of concrete objects, there is a secondary function, referring to items of discourse. For example, this sentence is short. This is what I mean. I'm happy with him. That way of looking at it is wrong. I said her dress looked hideous. She didn't like that. In the above, this sentence refers to the sentence being spoken. Under pronoun, this refers to what is about to be spoken. That way refers to the previously mentioned way. Under pronoun, that refers to the content of the previous statement. These are abstract entities of discourse, not concrete objects. Each language may have subtly different rules on how to use demonstratives to refer to things previously spoken, currently being spoken, or about to be spoken. In English, that refers to something previously spoken, while this refers to something about to be spoken.